Do you ever lament? And how do you use your leisure time? Or do you even make time for leisure? We're talking lament, leisure, laziness, liberty, and legalism today. We are so glad you're here for it. Hello there, I'm Christine James.
And I'm Jocelyn DeWitt. And here's the thing. The God who created all the earth did not call you, set you apart, anoint you, and create you to live an ordinary life. He called you to live an extraordinary one.
Now, Jocelyn and I, we don't have PhDs. We don't have mega ministries. We're just two anointed ladies oversharing about living devoted in the dailies. Welcome to the conversation.
This is Devoted in the Daily.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Well, I'm going to get it right this week. Guess what we're diving into now?
We are diving into L.
Oh, I thought, okay, yeah.
What?
Nothing.
Did I mess you up?
No.
You were going to get it right this time.
I was. And so I was going to say it. And then I think you thought I was going to say it. And then you said it. And then I don't know what happened. But
I thought we were going to say it together.
Oh. Ready, set,
L. Okay, so what are some of our favorite L's?
Our favorite L's. Love. That's just...
There's the obvious one.
You always tell me.
To do.
I like to say the obvious one, but that's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's
I do love
totally
love.
True. I mean, God is love.
There's the obvious one.
There's the obvious
You just
one.
said it yourself.
There you go.
I love laughter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I really love? I love to linger.
Linger. That's a good one.
I do. I really love to linger.
Sometimes I think I should linger longer.
Really?
Yeah. Because, you get kind of like, I'm a little task oriented sometimes. I like to get things done.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I don't linger as long as I should.
Sometimes I linger too long.
Yeah.
So, there's this fine dance.
Fine dance.
In between.
We're going to be talking about the fine dance a lot today, aren't we?
Yeah. That was just a pre-dabble. What's another one of your L's?
Oh, literature.
Literature.
Well, books.
Yeah. I respect that. I respect it.
And loyalty.
Oh, that's a sweet one.
I mean,
we love loyalty.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
a good one.
I
like how God proves us to be loyal. God's proven to be loyal, but I also appreciate, I will say this, something that I've learned is that God will test us to prove to ourselves, to show us that we are loyal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
To
like,
him.
Yeah. Like for Abraham, sacrificing, going to sacrifice Isaac, like,
that was intense.
It's intense. Yeah. I was like, what are we doing?
I was just making a noise, like, a sound effect to your...
Yes. So I think about that sometimes, that like God wanted to show Abraham how loyal he was to the Lord. Mm-hmm. Like God knew how loyal he was because he knows, as we talked about in K. But I love that.
Yeah. One more thing. I have one more thing.
Okay.
Well, okay, maybe two. We'll see how time is. Light.
Yes.
Light.
And we're not talking lamp light.
Well, I mean, I would much prefer a lamp light than an overhead light.
But you would most prefer daylight.
Yes, ma'am. You know me.
I do. I'm the same one. I love. Oh, this morning I opened my door and I was drinking my coffee and I had just this breeze coming in and all this daylight just hitting the window and the door, and my grass is green, and I love how the daylight just hits things. You know what I mean? It just touches, and it's just.
I mean, the
powerful.
evening light is pretty amazing too. When like those dusk walks, man.
Yeah.
Light. And of course, when you're in the darkness,
light is powerful.
Jesus is the light in those dark seasons. Love that light.
Yeah. My daughter was telling my son last night, he wanted a light on, and she's like, what are you scared of? You have Jesus in you. He's the light. Just let him glow. I was like, there's she likes it pitch black. And he's like, just put a hall light on. She's like, you have the light in you. Just let him.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I think about that sometimes.
That's awesome.
I have to throw, I have to throw a thing in there.
Of course, food.
A food in there.
Yeah.
This is becoming a thing. I didn't even know it, but it's a thing now.
Lemons?
No, I'm taking it a step farther.
Limes.
No, farther than that.
Legumes.
I mean, no. We're going to talk lemon curd.
Oh, man.
Like a crepe with some lemon curd on there. A scone with some lemon curd on there.
Yeah.
Just lemon curd.
Union Coffee has waffles. They serve waffles.
Do they put a lemon curd on the waffle?
Sometimes they have the specialty. Well, last summer they had a specialty with a lemon curd and then raspberry. Yeah.
I like lemon curd on cheesecake too. I know a lot of people that love cheesecake, but one of my favorite ways to eat cheesecake is lemon curd with fresh berries.
All right.
It's
a good one.
The bee's knees.
The bee's knees.
The bee's knees.
Life-giving things. I know this is kind of random.
Like laughter.
But I don't know. There was a season where I just felt so void of like my life. Like I had given so much to my family. This was really in the childbearing years, I think, where I just give and give and give. And I felt like I had no life in me. Like I was so drained. And with this concept of like, do life-giving things. It's like trying to figure out, oh my gosh, there are certain things that give me life.
Like what?
Like I need to prioritize. Like a good book at a coffee shop.
Yes.
At a neat cafe.
Yes.
Like a walk in the sunshine or a picnic with a charcuterie board, or a good quality intimate conversation with a good friend.
Yes.
Shopping sometimes.
I mean, yeah.
Sometimes.
When done right.
Yeah. Or like, and with that, a lot of it is like some decorating. There's some creativity in that.
Yes.
Whether it's like piecing together an outfit or making something beautiful on my wall. Like, yeah, that's bringing something new in to create something neat.
Right. But I think life-giving things, I've always kind of found this is like, in the distraction of life when we're exhausted, like she's talking about, and life-giving things, really what brings out who God created you, right? Those things that like God has like established, and the way he knows you, you know what I mean? Like when you do things that bring out his full creation in you, it's like it's like that cup of water, you know what I mean? Like it's reinvigorating. I love that. That's good.
I mean, I know somebody who loves grocery shopping, and that gives them life. It sucks life from me.
So bluntly, it sucks life from me.
There's certain things. Of course, we all have individual.
I mean, cooking for me is very life-giving. I could just stand over the stove for hours, and my feet could hurt, and my back could hurt from being all day long.
So alive.
But yeah,
no, not for me.
Yeah, I don't care if my back hurts while I'm standing there. Like it's, when you've gone through the whole day.
Not the kitchen. No.
That's my life-giving place.
Well, I'm so glad. I will benefit sometimes from from that.
I know. Sometimes I sit down and I'm like, you all don't even know how good you got it right now. My cup is full. I don't care if you eat or not. So that's good.
Okay.
That works good. Anyway.
That's enough with our favorites.
Moving on
to what we're thinking. Jocelyn has some really interesting thoughts that we're gonna kind of dig into.
What we're thinking. When I thought about Elle, my favorite, it's a favorite of mine, and it's, I think, something that the Lord really was just on me about and really sat on me, and it's like, I need you to talk about this because I really want to hear from my children in a deeper way. And so that is the word lament. And sometimes we don't really know what lament means. Or sometimes we lament without knowing we're lamenting. And sometimes we reserve ourselves from lamenting because we live in a world and a culture that says, keep your stuff together.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, Jocelyn, you're going to have to carry this conversation. I mean, I don't. So I looked it up.
She looked it up.
I looked it up, and this is so good. It says, what is lament? A lament is a prayer expressing sorrow, pain, or confusion.
Lament should be the chief way Christians process grief in God's presence. Because many Christians have grown up in churches which always looks on the bright side.
Mm.
Lament can be jarring.
Jarring. Do you hear that word? Jarring. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look beautiful and comfortable, but like to God, it is stunning. To him, he gets to hear, and you bear your heart and your soul and your emotions and your thoughts and your anger and your frustrations. And I think it's this moment that is so intimate and personal and real,
raw.
And we've been taught, I think that, the church, we've been taught to keep it together and to focus on the good news, and everything's good and God's got it. And yes, God,
choose joy.
And God does have it. We're not negating from that. But also there's this wrestling and this turmoil and this hurt and this pain and this anger and frustration and this doubt and sometimes unbelief and fear and resentment and bitterness. And all of those things are very, very real. And all of those things, I believe, are a part of processing as humans what we're dealing with in the world and as people in relationship, and how we can express to the Lord, right? It's an expression that God has given us to be able to lament with him. And I remember I loved to lament before I really understood what lament was. And then I went through a deep season of being in the Psalms. Right?
About some lamenting.
Right. And I was like, look at David. Look at how David like laments in front of the Lord and says how he's angry and says how he's fearful and says, how his sorrow, and just cast me out, and just,
man after God's heart.
Yes. And he was real. Raw.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the Lord tells us to come boldly to him. And I think that that's a big significant thing, that like he wants us to come boldly to him and just bear ourselves in front of his feet and just lay it all out. Right.
Yeah. Can I read some synonyms?
Yeah.
Synonyms.
Read the synonyms.
Bemoan, deplore, bawl, bewail, cry, howl, moan, hurt, repine, sing. How many lamenting songs are out there? Hit songs.
Oh,
yeah, because we can relate. To sing our lament. Sob, sorrow, wail, weep, beat one's breast. Yeah.
It's very true. I think there's a lot of power behind lamenting. And I think the Lord, first off, the Lord calls us to lament, right? He calls us to sit there. And in that place of lamenting, you get to experience God's comfort, right? And power and strength, and like just him as a father, and that wrapping over in the wings, that just kind of comes over and just lets you just have a safe place to cry out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I'll tell you, it can be exhausting.
Yes.
I don't know. After a good cry, where you are completely like, there is a sobbing hangover, right? Like you feel it the next day.
It's true. And longer sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The eyes are puffy. You've got this thing in your head.
Yeah.
And
your body's tired.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The emotional energy it took to just, and the physical energy, it's just
to expel.
Yeah. It's exhausting. But, and then you're completely got to kind of function and lean on him, I think, in those moments afterwards, even, right?
Which is the sweetest thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's a lot of what it is. It's like, and you think about like fasting, right? We're sacrificing ourselves for his strength. And in a place of lamenting, you're bearing it out and laying it down and getting real and raw in front of the Lord and laying all your weaknesses out, right? And your humility. It's a place of complete humbleness and sacrifice. Like you're sacrificing your comfortability, because sometimes it's not comfortable to bear and be raw, right? And be that vulnerable.
Ugly cry. It's called an ugly cry for a reason.
Yeah. And you're wrestling. Do you know something that the Lord, I kind of just started doing with the Lord, was I started going out to my garage. this is kind of weird. I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but I put my headphones in when I'm wrestling something with the Lord, and I go out and I call it like duking it out with him. Like him and I will wrestle it out, and I'll stand out there and scream and cry and argue and be like, I am, and you know, and really just lament in every vulnerable way in front of him. And it's exhausting. But in that place, I've made an exchange, right? In the place of lamenting, like she's talking about, I've made an exchange and I've pulled out everything that I have. And I'm saying here, and as I give, I then get to receive this strength and this understanding and this knowledge and this peace and this comfort that like, we don't fully get if we're not willing to give, you know, there has to be like you get this impartation of something that is so unique and important. And the Lord like desire, he would not ask me to bring it up if it's not something that he so desires to do with you. So lament
until you're at a place where there is a peace.
Yes.
And that's the thing, like you're talking about the exchange. So we can stop mid lament because, you know, we got to be somewhere and not fully be able to rest because we haven't received that peace, right?
Yeah, we haven't fully.
I mean, just even last week, I was in the middle of a lament and it happened all day, but it was like little pieces because I had this to be at and I had to go do this and I had to, you know, and even like being raw in front of my kids and being able to be like teary.
Yeah.
And be like, it's fine. I would love some prayer, you know, but I'm not going to be able to fully lament in the midst of all the doing, right?
Of the daily. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
But to be able to get to this place where I got to find a spot to be able to get it all out and be able to receive and know that God hears me and know that he's carrying me in this and that this is for a purpose.
Yes.
Like whatever we're going through, whatever trials I'm wailing about, there is a purpose to it and God is working in this and I'm going to yell out and sob out my confusion about it. But yeah, in the end, to be able to have that peace and that rest and that exchange in it.
Right. And he's faithful to keep it. Yeah. He's faithful to keep it bubbled up. So like you can't really get far away from it. Our job is to make sure
we're able to get vulnerable enough.
Yeah. Our job is to meet him in that place and say, okay, I acknowledge that you really got a lot. Like my chest is heavy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My heart is heavy. And to process it, sometimes lamenting is a season of lamenting. It is not.
Yeah.
It is not just a day, you know, sometimes it's weeks where the Lord puts something on your heart. So go and bear yourself in front of the Lord and lament with him because it's a very sweet treasured time that I really think he desires with each of us.
With each of us. Continuously. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, on that note. That's what we're thinking.
See how good God is in the midst of you bearing your heart in front of him. Yes.
We're going to move on to some conversations, some daily, some devoted discussion.
Let's dive in. Okay. Here we go. What are we going to be talking about?
Man, so there's a few L's that are going to kind of bleed into each other. It's how we do sometimes. But the first thing I want to bring up is the topic of leisure.
Leisure. I love this word.
Leisure.
I said linger. Now we're going to talk about leisure.
What do you know?
What do you know? Okay. So how do we want to start with leisure?
There's like some things the Bible tells us about leisure. And, I love kind of pulling out scriptures that seem to contradict each other because we have this inner wrestle constantly, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I for sure do. I don't know if you do, but it's like this inner wrestle. It's like, okay, so about leisure, let's talk about a time where God is like, leisure is not so good. And then another time where God is like, you need some leisure.
It's like works without faith is dead also, but don't fall into a place of work. So it's like this kind of dance, but so you have to figure out the middle line. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
We're going to talk about a lot of L dancing, balancing.
Yes.
So with leisure, I mean, in Exodus, 2 Samuel, It's in 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 5. We see David taking a bit of leisure. It is the time where kings would go off to war. And David decides to send one of his men to go lead his armies. And he is going to stay and be leisurely during this season of when kings are supposed to be off to war. And that kind of got him in a little bit of trouble, didn't it, Jocelyn?
It did. Just a little bit.
What was he doing on his leisurely days, not at war?
He was meeting a woman named Bathsheba.
Oh. Just kind of saw her
in the corner of his eye.
And had time on his hands.
All of a sudden,
he had some leisure. So he decided to do something
leisurely.
In
yes.
his leisure, he was so led astray.
Yeah.
So led astray. One look just took him down a path of absolute destruction. Led him into utter
complete sin. Yep.
Utter demise. And so much destruction because he chose to be leisurely when it was not his time to be leisurely.
It was a time of obedience, and he did not. How many can we relate to that?
Oh, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there is something for you to do. It's not like a place of like,
yeah,
you know what I mean. That I think we can relate to that, and maybe not do what David did, but can relate to.
Or maybe,
yeah,
if we're just scrolling on our phone, things pop up that maybe we don't need to be pushing on or looking at.
True. Yeah. Different avenues.
Yeah. But then there's also time where we do need to be leisurely, right? Jesus instructs his disciples in Mark 6:31. This is when him and his disciples are doing a lot of ministering. They just fed a lot of people miraculously, and people are pressing in on them on every side.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, "Come with me by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. So there is a time where we need to remove ourselves from all that's going on to replenish and restore, to make some leisure time.
Which personally, I really appreciate that side, because I can find myself too far into a place of, I have no leisure time. But you have to be purposeful, like he was like, come and like, let's take time.
Yeah.
And being aware that like you have not had this time.
Yeah.
Makes it okay and calls them to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's the struggle of doing versus being.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Like we've talked about before. Yes. 100%. And I think there's power in being called away and being told to leisure. It's a gift.
That's a gift. And there's some other L's that we can relate to this.
Balancing.
There is liberty, and then there's being lazy.
Yeah. There's that. What do you want to say about liberty? The freedom.
The freedom that Christ gives is undeniable.
It is undeniable. It's such a gift. It is such a gift to be able to have the freedom, just like they had the freedom to leisure, right? Like he was coming, like you have the liberty to go out and be leisurely, to take time for yourselves. Yeah. But that can turn into
being lazy.
Sometimes laziness.
Taking liberty, like what David did. He sure took a lot of liberties.
And the wrong avenue. Yes. True. Yeah, we don't want to be,
because we don't want to be legalistic, right?
No.
We don't want to labor so much in works.
No.
But So how in the world do we balance all of the?
I don't even know. I think there's like this submission and this like, we really have to be in a place of asking the Lord, like sometimes when I'm in a leisurely place, I'm always kind of like, I don't want to get too far because I have been too far and I'm aware and I've had that lesson. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's burned on my skin that like, you don't want to go that way. So I think we need to be very conscious to say like, Lord, what would you have me do today? What is like, where am I at? Where am I taking time and like and submit to if God is saying, hey, you're being lazy right now. Hey, you've taken your liberty of freedom a little too far. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
where there's time where God's like, you need some leisure.
Right. And you've moved on to the other side.
Slow the heck down. You're like beating your body.
Yes.
Too much.
Yes. And we talked about relating this to the race.
Oh, that's right.
We talked about relating this.
Will you read that scripture?
I will read that scripture. Where are we?
It's Hebrews 12:1.
12:1. Here we go.
Remembered the address.
Here it goes. Therefore, since we are surrounded by a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith.
We do this by keeping our eyes on him.
Right. And that's not just okay, I'm following Jesus. It's like keeping your eyes on him daily.
The eyes.
Yes. So,
like there is freedom from legalism for us. There's liberty. We don't need to be bound by all of the laws.
Yeah, we can cast off the restraint.
We have so much freedom to run, to run hard and not be restrained by the laws. And yet we can sometimes we get entangled with the sin that we take in our liberty
and our laziness. Do you know?
Yes.
Right. So we were relating this to running a marathon and how in the running we have to cast off restraint and like rest and we have to stretch and we have to take drinks and we have to, I've heard that people don't like to take bathroom breaks while they're running a race, but that could be a thing. And
well, I ran a marathon once.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it was in San Francisco where there's a bunch of different terrain that we went over, right? And that's kind of our life is full of different seasons and different terrains, and each terrain requires a different pace.
Yes.
Maybe a different tool set even, man, I broke out into hives at the beginning of it.
I think it has a different set of labor and a different set of liberty when you're running, you know what I mean? Like you need a certain kind of freedom to be able to run, but you also need like a certain kind of like restraint to like keep your eyes focused to get up the hill.
Going.
Yeah.
You don't want to sit down and get out of the race.
No.
So you do you got to pace yourself.
Yeah. Got to pace yourself.
Take some Benadryl with you in case you break out into hives.
She did that.
If your shoes are destroying your feet, take some, you got to walk.
Yeah. And
you're going to need water along the way.
Yeah. It's not all, we can just sometimes put our eyes like on the end, right? We're going to complete this thing, but there is a lot of freedom and grace and, liberty, like we're talking about in the midst of that. But there's also this training and this labor that we have to put in to be able to complete it. So that's that fine dance, is knowing that on the journey, there is this liberty to pause and stop and walk and change your shoes or take your Benadryl or have a drink. But there's also this like labor that you have to put in that is long suffering and enduring. And,
because you're not going to finish if you just sit and eat your food.
Yeah.
Or,
we have to labor.
You have to persevere.
Yeah. And we do that by keeping our
eyes on Jesus.
On Jesus.
Consistently to know, okay, what's right for this moment.
It kind of, you know what it reminds me of? it reminds me of like how he says the path is narrow,
Mm.
right? And like I always look at it so visually and think, okay, there's my narrow path. My eyes are on Jesus, the narrow gate right in the front, right? But I could get a little too far to the right if I become too legalistic, and then I'm kind of skirting out. Or if I become too lazy, I could be moving a little far to the left. And when I start looking those directions is when my body starts to sway one way or the other. And so that's just my constant reminder. If my eyes are not focused on that narrow gate, I could get too wishy-washy on one side or the other, right? But it's all there. The liberty and the labor.
The liberty and the labor. Well, that was fun.
That was a good time. Lots of L's. Lots of L's today.
We love you, our listeners.
Look what she did there. We do love you very much.
Thanks for being with us.
Okay.
Have a good week.
Mark your calendar for the next live. It is coming up, and we are stoked to get real with you in real time about all of these things. It's 11:30 on the last Tuesday of the month. Now you can catch Jocelyn almost daily on the socials for buckets of great encouragement in little doses. Find her at Buckets of Berries. She's on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And well, speaking of balancing all the things, you can train to be confident in your eternal identity as both royalty and a warrior in the Crown and Sword Bible Study curriculum. Links are in this episode's details. Will you please just be sure to like this video or podcast so it can reach more people? Will you share it? And maybe comment and let us know your thoughts. And make sure you're subscribed so that you can keep up with all the goodness going on over here. It's with so much gratitude we pray that you will be filled with the knowledge of His will, bearing fruit and being strengthened with endurance and joy. Godspeed, friend.